everybody. My name is Anthony James, founder and CEO of a startup called Crypto Unbound. And with me is my new co-host.
Hey, I am Tim. I am the video guy. So everything looks really nice on my screen and Anthony's screen and all these great things that we've been putting together. And we're going to talk about crypto, as obviously, as you guys know, for for what the account is and all that great stuff. So anyway, Anthony, I would like to ask you, what's going on with crypto? Why is it so crazy?
Yeah, so let me tell you what, before we dive into that, what I want to do is I want to give kind of a brief background on kind of where I came from and what Crypto Unbound is. And then we can get into that really super interesting data that we want to tell everybody about, because there's a lot going on underneath the surface of what's in the media right now, right? You've seen some of that. So first off, again, Anthony James, I founded a company called Linux Academy in March of 2012. And in December of 2019, it was acquired by a company called a Cloud Guru. And as part of that, I had exited the company. It was a great exit. And as everybody knows, well, COVID hit. It followed up, and we had so much fun. I'm sure you have too, Timothy, since
I had
COVID
a blast.
Started. Yeah. Well, and you know what was really interesting is, you remember all those media headlines during 2020? It was like so much division and fear everywhere. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, it was just like everything was basically like, it's not like you don't take it seriously, but it was just, there was no hope. It was all dread. Everything was just negative constantly. You know, you can't go out, you can't touch something, you can't see somebody, and you don't like it was just weird. You just had so much fear constantly, just in and out of everything. I don't like it's just crazy too, because you start to even see some of that nowadays, even a year or so later. But like, what was some of the stuff that you like really grasped onto when you're talking about that COVID stuff? What was the craziest thing that you saw?
Well, you've had headlines: re-elect Donald Trump, and we're all going to die. Right?
Yeah.
Or re-elect Joe Biden, we're all going to die. Like maximum fear. But what was interesting, and for all of everybody interested in crypto, and the reason that they're here, a lot of you are probably familiar with the concept of FUD: fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Right? It's a type of headline which causes you to be afraid of maybe losing your money, or uncertain about a crypto's future, or doubtful that you made the right investment. Now, what's interesting is, there's been a lot of interesting components. I really dove into the media last year, and I was identifying sources. I was tracking things down. I was spending so much time watching things live, like presidential talks, just to kind of get a feel of like how media uses context and how media uses certain things to push specific narratives, right? And we've all heard media say, oh, there was an attempt at a narrative change and it didn't happen. Like, narratives are not a secret. Media uses narratives to tell a story, right? So I got really interested in this, and I felt called, or had a calling, right, to kind of build this tool to understand media narratives a bit more. And in order to actually do that, I needed something that was purely sentiment based to test it against.
Right.
So I picked Bitcoin, right? And what's interesting is what it kind of exposed, right? And that's what's interesting that we're going to show today, and the underlying data of essentially what happened in the bear market, and a prediction I made to the T, thanks to the Unbound engine, that actually ended up coming true. But to get your mind wrapped around what this looks like, I want to first paint a picture, if that's all right, Tim.
Yeah, go ahead. And honestly, too, man, like, tell me, because like you and I have kind of talked about some of this stuff, but it's wild to see certain things. Like, I think you're going to start talking about one of the big players in the Bitcoin industry, the person who talks about it the most, that seems to be giving us the most change, is Elon Musk. And this guy who is this billionaire CEO, has done PayPal, Tesla, all that good stuff, can tweet about Bitcoin on a Tuesday and it can go up 20% or whatever. Like, explain to me some of that data that you saw about him.
Well, I mean, which is weird, right?
Right.
It's not like Elon Musk needs any more money. It's not like he can't wake up in the morning and have any investment he wanted. Hey, the guy goes to the bathroom and comes out with a new $1 billion company. Right,
Right.
that's just what he does. So,
Yeah.
The media, the narrative along with that would have you believe that Elon Musk is just some rich dude that is trying to just take all of your money, and he's just so greedy. And when you're rich, you're greedy, and you don't care about anything other than stealing other people's money, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
that's what we're presented with. To kind of give you a context of how agenda works, is it all right if I do that before we jump into that one?
Yeah, do it. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, are you familiar with the UFO narrative back in April
Yes.
of 2021? It lasted April, May, and June.
Yeah.
They came out with some Pentagon report.
Yeah, basically everybody had, I don't know if it was the Navy. I think it was the Navy. And they were just like showing like these not high res, but like these videos from their radar.
Well, so what's interesting is, were you also aware that in April of 2020, May of 2020, and June of 2020, there was a UFO narrative during quarantine?
I was not. No.
You don't remember that? Well, these are the things that Unbound can monitor, and it's kind of cool.
Huh.
But the thing is, do you know what happens? The UFO stories on the equivalent of like page 1, right? It's the dominant narrative. What might be on page 12? Well, what was happening in May of 2020 and May of 2021 was the Pentagon submitted their almost $800 billion Pentagon budget for approval. Right? Now, how would you feel about that if you hadn't seen a UFO narrative?
I would feel like that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Like a lot of taxpayer money. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, then you get this UFO story that basically says either there's aliens that have more advanced technology than us that are not being friendly and they're kind of observing, which is a military tactic.
Right.
Or it's another country who has more advanced technology than us. This is specifically what the Pentagon official said. But that creates a little bit of fear.
Sure.
So when you see that UFO narrative, and if you just so happen to turn to page 12 to see the budget conversation, your response most likely is going to be what? Like, why are we only spending $800 billion?
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. You'd be like, we need to spend twice as much or something like that. That's the way it would make me feel. Be like, we got to be safe. We don't want another country to attack us or another entity from another planet or whatever. Yeah, that makes total sense.
It generates fear.
Sure.
No. It's a headline. UFO headlines are headlines that generate fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Doubt around the military's capability to defend us.
Right.
Uncertain that we're safe, and fearful that we're all going to die. In a way. Hopefully they're good aliens, right?
Right.
At the story, the story that they're telling us, hopefully it's good aliens. So what was interesting is turning this on for Bitcoin, going back to your question.
Yes.
It started picking up a bunch of stuff back in April. It's kind of when we turn on April 1st. And if you recall what happened in the Bitcoin world, Elon Musk is all pro Bitcoin. It encourages green energy. Tesla comes out and accepts Bitcoin. And then next thing you know, he's on Saturday Night Live trying to get everybody over to Dogecoin for some interesting reason.
Yeah.
He has a skit in Saturday Night Live, which says, literally, he's telling the world, saying, I'm going to look like the bad guy, but it's not what it seems, right? That was the Mario, the bad guy Mario.
Oh, is when he was
Wario. Yeah. So, and then he flips. And honestly, man, I just got to show you this data.
Okay.
Right. Should we just jump into some of this? Well, first, let's hit the prediction.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna hit the prediction. So I posted it on Twitter, July 13th. I had to put it out there, or else people are gonna think I'm coming in after the fact and just making stuff up, right?
Yeah, of course.
So Bitcoin prediction based off the Bitcoin Unbound AI Trend Finder. This tool, which ingests media headlines from different segments, from industry news, mainstream media, banks, and financials. And it labels it by positive, negative, and neutral. It also has different levels of negativity, like fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And so I went in there, and what the data showed me was that we were going to have, a super negative all summer long, that we were going to have a positive injection of positive headlines into the Bitcoin market on July 21st. And that's exactly what happened. And I'll show you the data, which shows that the charts and the actual source data.
Okay.
Then the AI started picking up on July 17th, which is still before it started turning around. In fact, 2 days later, it hit 29,000. 3 days later, it picked up a 30-day trend change based off of the data that was being ingested. And the trend change identified that Bitcoin price was going to be higher than it was on July 17th, 30 days from July 17th. Wow. If anybody's followed Bitcoin, we know it came true. What's going to be real interesting is how this prediction happened. The headlines tell a story. Okay, so first I'm going to show you the data, the endpoint data, before I show you the source data. So this is what we call FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, the quantity of media headlines through the crypto industry and the mainstream media that incorporate some sort of FUD, right? So FUD is another example of Bitcoin price is going to go to $10,000. You're afraid you're going to lose money.
Sure.
Or China bans Bitcoin, or Elizabeth Warren comes out and says, oh, let's ban Bitcoin because it's green energy consumption. That's FUD. This was May 13th. This is our Elon Musk FUD. We had a pretty good, we were leveling off in price. And you notice price was responding before the FUD ever happened. And in fact, there's interesting on-chain movements that occurred. The net Bitcoin exchange position started to change even before the narrative changed. And then, I mean, just look at this for a second. And I'm not going to say anything about it, but just look at the heartbeat of this FUD. Isn't that pretty interesting?
Yeah, it looks like there is some, and I don't know what it is from in terms of like what each story would be. That would be the fearful story, the uncertain story, or the doubtful story.
Yeah.
You can see that there is a pattern where you've got data coming in and it's just going up and down and up and down. And there's a good rhythm of pumping fearful stories. Is that correct from what I'm seeing?
It's what it looks like, right?
Yeah. Regardless of what you think, like you could take politics or anything out of that. There is statistical things that look like a rhythm for pumping that kind of narrative.
Well, I mean, let's just look at the data. I'm not going to let's just let people see the data, right?
Sure.
So what I'll do is I'll pull up the source data and I'll show you that. But real quick, we are launching the Crypto Unbound platform,
right?
Where people are going to have access to the data and the charts and training and content completely around it, right? We know that the media pushes a sentiment that's not always the same sentiment of the market, right? Market being people like you and me who purchase an asset like Bitcoin. So maybe we're bearish and the media is pushing bullish. Right. If I browse up a little bit more, and this is our net sentiment, the prediction was that July 21st, we were going to have a massive positive news injection into the market. Now, if you look, this is July, and we're looking at net sentiment. So everything above the line is net positive headlines. Everything below for the day is net negative headlines towards Bitcoin.
And is the pink line, is that your Bitcoin pricing?
Yes, that's the Bitcoin price. Now, if you look at it, maximum tank the day before the narrative change. And next thing you know, the day I predicted it, well, 8 days prior, but we said July 21st, the narrative was going to change and the Bitcoin price was going to change with it.
So what was, I don't know if we have this, but what was the negative? Like there was so much negativity on it. And then the next day it was completely positive. Like what happened there?
So, and I mean, we should probably do in one of the later episodes, come back to go over those specific headlines.
Sure.
But what was happening is we saw hedge funds, mutual funds, we saw all these people coming out and saying the Bitcoin bear market is just getting started. $15,000 is probably the real price. Like it wasn't a narrative FUD. It was more of, for some reason, financial people and other people in the industry were coming out basically saying Bitcoin was going to cut in half from where it was. And that all happened just before. Yeah.
And so then what turned it positive? Was that the stuff with Elon Musk, correct?
So the prediction was that the B word event was going to ingest massive positivity for Bitcoin into the market. Part of that prediction was because Cathy Wood was going to be there and Elon Musk was going to be there, which the mainstream media loves to talk about. So I knew it was going to happen. I have no doubt there's got to be billion-dollar hedge funds that have this. But the kicker is the people need it.
Businesses have strategy teams. They have strategic ways to like know where they're going to invest in, but there's got to be something like that there. But for the retail investor, the guy who's on Robinhood, when they stop, letting them invest in GameStop while everybody else kind of can do their own thing, that retail guy is who needs information like that. That's kind of where you're going with it, right?
Right. So
Yep.
for the Bitcoin price to go up, people have to buy it.
Correct.
So who was buying it at the bottom, and how did it go to 29,000? And then who is set up to buy it after the positive injection? It's usually the retail trader.
Correct.
It's not buying at the bottom, but it's buying at the top. First off, let's look at these headlines. This is inside the database. I just did an SQL query inside of the Unbound engine database. Okay. And what it does is, like I said, is the engine ingests headlines. These are media headlines. Here's the date. Here's the sentiment the headline is. That's towards Bitcoin, right? So JP Morgan gives 130,000 Bitcoin price target. That's really good news for Bitcoin since it was not $130,000 in price.
Correct.
Right? So what's interesting about this, and I'm pulling only JP Morgan headlines here, is JP Morgan is super bullish, which means they're really optimistic that Bitcoin is going to have an amazing price.
Yeah, back in April.
In fact, yeah, it even goes up to 470,000. Now, for context, ARK Invest, I believe she's either the founder or co-founder. Cathy Wood leads ARK Invest. So what's interesting is some of these headlines, right? And we'll see Cathy Wood pop up a couple of times here. JP Morgan's super excited about it all of April. And if we remember all of April, we just saw on the chart, Bitcoin price was in the 50s and $60,000.
Right. That's when because I remember that. That's when everything just seemed like everything went crazy. That was even after Elon Musk tweeted about the positive things about Bitcoin. Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, so that was like when everything was like insane and everybody was jumping on it.
JP Morgan was excited, but fast forward to, let's see here, about April 26th. Some narratives change. Now look at this top one. Report, JP Morgan prepares to launch actively managed Bitcoin fund. JP Morgan to let clients invest in Bitcoin fund. Private clients, wealthy clients. This one's my favorite. JP Morgan launches its first Bitcoin fund this summer. There was one in here that said as early as May. So JP Morgan wants to let their wealthiest, they have different sets of investors. They have their wealthiest private, then they have it open up to their all of their clients, which they just did on July 21st, which we'll get to that in a second. So, look at this narrative. They're excited and they're going to offer, they're created Bitcoin funds for and this was leaked, right? So this was all over the mainstream media. This isn't a secret. Bloomberg picked up on it. CNBC, I believe, picked up on it. It was everywhere, right? Now, next thing you know, after the announcement, after the leak of their wealthy private clients to get access as early as May and June, let's fast forward just a little bit because all this is regurgitating stuff. But let's fast forward where we start seeing some negative headlines from JP Morgan, research reports, analysts reports. They're now kind of going, oh, well, stop paying attention to Bitcoin and pay attention to something else while we've opened up our funds. Now, next thing you know is May 5th, JP Morgan CEO remains a Bitcoin bear, says that he's not a Bitcoin supporter.
I don't know where the data would be or if there's more into those articles, but why is that JP Morgan CEO all of a sudden switching to a negative or saying he's a Bitcoin bear when just a month ago they were like 130 to 470K?
I mean, that's a great question because it continues to have they continue to put out negative headlines all the way up until the week before July 21st.
And again, you're not even pulling this from, these aren't like dark web headlines, right? This is mainstream.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what's crazy to me. It's like you can literally go find that article from April talking about Bitcoin to almost 500,000 to now being like, maybe you should do Ethereum. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, heck, here he is, JP Morgan CEO. Now, when he said this versus when the media headlines are coming out, those are two separate things.
Sure.
Right. I got a research team working on all of that. But 529, JP Morgan CEO says cryptocurrencies are far inferior to traditional assets. JP Morgan, more gloomy days. So obviously this is in real time because this is when it was gloomy. So 6/5, June 5th, more gloomy days ahead for Bitcoin. JP Morgan doesn't believe 2021 will feature much improvement. JP Morgan points to weak futures as signal for bear market.
Wow.
JP Morgan doesn't see much upside in El Salvador's Bitcoin adoption. This is 613, all the way down. Bitcoin price could reach 25,000 after grayscale unlock, which is a whole thing.
Yeah.
JP Morgan's still bullish. Look at this, all the way down. Bitcoin could dump to 23,000. That's
wow.
Yeah. This is June 25th. It's like every week they're pushing hard to be negative about Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy, but it gets crazier. Like this isn't even the crazy part.
Wow.
Like,
okay.
This isn't the crazy
part.
Well,
show me what's crazy and show everybody else what's crazy. I want to see it.
All right. So we'll I got to finish Bitcoin up to the 21st, right? Okay. All this stuff negative. And just look at that column right here. Negative, 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 negative. July 21st. And magically it flips.
Yeah.
Like to the day starts flipping. Now we had one ahead of time. We predicted that there was going to be a flip. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what you predicted on that with your tweet earlier, which again, all that tweet and everything, again, just to confirm for me and the audience though, that is based off of this data. That is where that prediction came from. Correct.
But I mean, this is just part of the story, right?
Sure.
So let me pull in the Elon Musk story here. Okay. I'm going to pull back to the top. Elon Musk, relatively positive towards Bitcoin in terms of headlines, right? Elon Musk and Jack Dorsey back research on Bitcoin mining efficiency, right? They claim it encourages, Elon Musk and Jack Dorsey say Bitcoin incentivizes renewable energy.
And Jack Dorsey is the CEO of Twitter, if people don't know.
And he's the one that hosted the B Word event.
Right.
So this is April. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Elon Musk, I haven't sold any of it. Tesla announced accepting it. And then next thing you know, he shows up on Saturday Night Live to tell the world about a joke currency. And then also do a skit saying, I'm going to look like a bad guy, but I'm not. I'm being set up. He literally says he's set up. Right. If you watch the skit, watch the stinking skit.
The Wario skit, right?
Yeah. He goes, listen to my theme music. I'm set up to look like a bad guy. He's saying he's being set up, but how could he be set up? Well, I found some interesting things out in the research, right?
Okay. Yeah.
But here we go. We'll get to that. It's all fun. The data actually shows us how he's being set up here in a moment. So he goes on there, and then he is the single catalyst for the green energy FUD. Now, we did pick up, there was some green energy conversation picking up 2 weeks prior. Elon Musk jumps on board and uses it and says, we're done accepting Tesla, right? And he goes negative, 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 negative. And his tweets turn neutral around July 10th towards Bitcoin.
Right.
And then on July 21st, he comes out and says, Cathy Wood had put out stuff about green energy before July 21st, saying that Bitcoin is good now after all the work that's been done. The story started changing. They started planting seeds for Elon Musk to come on and say, yeah, I think we're ready to accept Bitcoin.
Wow. And just for people who don't know, who is Cathy Wood?
Cathy Wood, right? So we saw earlier that ARK Invest and JP Morgan. So Cathy Wood is the mainstream media financial hero, right? She runs a huge, I think it's a hedge fund that invests heavily inside of Bitcoin and other assets like Twitter and Square. She's on the cryptocurrency bandwagon. She's a front page person weekly.
Okay. And I don't want to stop with Elon, keep going with that, but do you have data on her as well?
Oh, sure. Let's pull up that real quick.
Okay. Because I'm really curious.
On my SQL queries I've already made, we're looking at Cathy Wood, right?
Yeah.
So here's the most interesting headline I've ever seen.
Wow.
Elon Musk tweets, saying his tweets that tanked Bitcoin likely came due to pressure from institutional investors, says Tesla bull, which means she's pro Tesla, Cathy Wood.
That's wild.
Yeah. So one could speculate what that pressure looked like.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to speculate?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's take the fact that Elon Musk went open on Saturday Night Live. If he were to say this was happening, he'd be screwed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like they're going to kill him, right. But what they will do is they'll stop supporting Tesla, right? So think about it, right? Anytime a hedge fund or, Jim Cramer or somebody gets excited about an asset and they buy it, and then they go tell everybody they buy it. Well, that's because the more people that know about it, the higher the price goes when they get in. So here we got Elon Musk, who announces Tesla bought $1.5 billion of Bitcoin in early April, I believe it was. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if we look at the JP Morgan headlines on when they opened their fund and when they turned bearish towards Bitcoin, one can only speculate based off this Cathy Wood headline on the screen right now that Elon Musk, and we know this happens, this is a thing, right? That Elon Musk got a phone call saying, hey, we don't really appreciate that you didn't give us a heads up that this was going to be a thing. If you want Tesla to continue being our favorite electric car maker, I'd highly encourage you to figure out a way to solve this problem.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain what the tweet was for people who might not know as well? What was the tweet that they're referring to that tanked?
Oh, yeah. Elon Musk came out and said, because of green energy consumption, it's off the charts. It's bad for the environment. Tesla is going to stop accepting Bitcoin.
So where it's possible, it's not too much of a leap. If it is even a leap, honestly, you would take what Cathy Wood said, who has credibility in this industry, then to say that it came from investors, which could infer to somebody like JP Morgan Chase or someone else who invests into Tesla. To be like,
institutional investors. I mean, they are by definition an institutional investor.
Yeah. So it's not really like you kind of basically have to just put one and one together is what you're saying.
You just got to use the law of deduction, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
A little bit of reasoning work. I'm just telling a story. I mean, I bet you we didn't even have to connect the dots. And a lot of people saw the story.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's really crazy. So then basically where there's a narrative that you could come to that institutional investors were not ready for Bitcoin to be so bullish. Would that be correct, or am I inferring incorrectly?
That's correct. I'm actually referring, because there's more.
Oh, jeez.
There's more. Yeah. I'm actually referring to this as the birth of a Wall Street asset.
Okay. As
crazy as it sounds. It's when institutions hit it, it's a Wall Street asset.
Sure. Yeah. That's really good.
All right. So let me fix my SQL query real quick.
So when you're doing this stuff, this is how we're able to ingest data through the Unbound engine, correct?
Yeah. So what this is me using SQL code to view it.
Right.
On the platform, people are going to have interfaces.
Correct. So
it's going to be a lot easier.
So for me, if anybody, whoever's watching this too, so for me, like, this is fascinating. I enjoy seeing this kind of stuff. I am not an expert at this. So it'll basically be an interface that anybody can access and use. That'll be a lot easier to use than just trying to code things, correct? Kind of like when you build a website even too. It's like there's ways to build websites through WordPress or different stuff like that, but you can also hard code everything. So it should be easier for a norm, like anybody who's coming in to buy a product or look at a product, they can interact with it just like an app on their phone.
I'm hoping my mom and dad use it.
Yes. Yeah. That's a great example. Yeah.
Yeah.
Show me what you got here now.
All right. So Elizabeth Warren is nowhere to be found until June 6th. Now, what happened June 6th is the El Salvador legislation approves the Bitcoin law, making Bitcoin legal tender in the country as a currency in law, right? And immediately, almost an hour, 2 hours later, Elizabeth Warren hijacks. It wasn't a Senate committee hearing for Bitcoin, but she hijacked one to call for the banning of Bitcoin because of its, guess what? Green energy, lack of green energy consumption, because of its energy consumption. Okay.
Wow.
So 6ix9ine, if we recall one of the charts, that was one of the peaks when I said it was Elizabeth Warren. She goes on here and she's trashing it. Now, I don't know if El Salvador was a surprise for a lot of people, but either way, somebody immediately was able to jump on board and counter the positive news of El Salvador in a way that got more media attention. El Salvador didn't get mainstream media attention.
Yeah, honestly, I've seen this stuff about Elizabeth Warren before, but El Salvador, it was kind of, when you had shown me that before, El Salvador stuff was a new thing that I was not very much aware of at all.
It's almost like they didn't want it out there.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. So Elizabeth Warren gets out there and takes over the El Salvador narrative. Okay. Look at this. Requires so much computing activity that it eats up more energy than entire countries.
Huh.
Right. So she pushes it. Now, I'm going to come back. I'm not going to come back. I'm going to show this now.
Yeah.
The good news for us, about a month later, Elizabeth Warren gives the SEC, she demands to the SEC that by July 28th, they need to figure out crypto regulation. Do you know what's interesting about this? Well, what's really interesting, Tim, I'm glad you asked. Let's take a look at SEC and ETF headlines.
And explain ETFs for
an ETF is essentially an exchange traded fund. Think about a mutual fund without the fees.
Sure.
And you can access it in your retirement account. You can access it just by buying the equivalent of stock in the stock market. It takes Bitcoin to the masses, to everybody.
Okay. So it's a big deal, is what
big
we're
deal.
saying. Yeah. Okay.
Big deal. And the SEC just so happened that in May and in June, they had about 11, I don't know the exact number, they had quite a few ETF filings that they were set to approve or deny. They delayed them all by 45 days. So look at this. After it goes bearish, the SEC doesn't want to inject positive news into the market, right? They need good regulation for an ETF. That's part of the narrative. The reason that it hasn't gone there is because regulations are not clear, right? So SEC delays it all the way down. And we stop hearing anything about the SEC and delaying on 7/17, on July 17. All of it's gone at the moment. Now, what's happening right now is good for us. Elizabeth Warren demanded that the SEC have regulation in place just in time for their delayed ETF approvals or denials to start being up for review again in August.
Interesting.
Also, remember July 21st. July 21st, positive news injection. Regulation occurs. Next thing you know, we're going to hit August, September, October, November, and they're going to be approving ETFs every month, which is going to have all of the retail investors piling on top of all of JP Morgan's and whoever else was involved, the wealthy clients on there. Now, you can do Google searches on JP Morgan and Elizabeth Warren connections. A lot of people say it's conspiracy theory. Here's data. Just go do a little bit of research.
Right. You can just, like, that's what we were saying earlier. It's like, you're not going through like this massive dark web type of trend. It's just there.
It's public information. I can show you. I can literally check this out. If I change this, and it's going to add a little bit on the screen, but instead of looking at the title, I can pull the URL.
Wow.
Yeah.
So there it is. If you guys are watching this, you can feel free to pause it, find all those links, and see that it's not just made up headlines. It's actual links to places that you and I could go to right now. That's wild. I didn't know you. I didn't know you could do that. That's crazy.
Oh, it's all of the data, man. I mean, because the thing is like you look at this, and heck, if mainstream media was going to talk about me or us, talk about Crypto Unbound right now,
right?
What do you think they would say?
Oh, it'd probably be very fearful, very uncertain.
Yeah, like making stuff up to drop. Like I'm not making anything up. We're just ingesting data from their RSS feeds.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah. Not coming up with some like weird like aliens are pumping Bitcoin or anything like that. Exactly.
No.
It's just trying to put the dots together from like one thing to the next to help, I don't know, just like to help the normal guy succeed is what it really feels like.
This is the story in a timeline. I love timelines. They tell such a great story, right? Early April, JP Morgan, Elon Musk, super excited about Bitcoin and incentivizes green energy. April 26th, it's leaked that JP Morgan is offering funds for Bitcoin to its wealthiest clients. May 5th, all JP Morgan communication turns negative towards Bitcoin. May 13th, Elon Musk flips the green energy narrative and says, we're not accepting Bitcoin because of the energy consumption. May 28th, Cathy Wood says Elon Musk tweets that tanked Bitcoin likely came due to pressure from institutional investors. Well, she is an institutional investor, so I feel like she would probably know. One of the most popular and well-respected institutional investors out there, I might add. June 9th, Bitcoin is now legal tender in El Salvador. Hours later, Elizabeth Warren hijacks Senate hearing to thrash Bitcoin energy narrative to counter that. That was an immediate response. June 15th, the SEC begins to delay in ETF filings until July 27th and later. The rest of them are in August. July 8th, we're very lucky to have Elizabeth Warren demand the SEC have regulations figured out for crypto by July 28th, just in time for the SEC approvals. We're very lucky.
Yeah, just in time, right?
Yep. June 24th, Jack Dorsey announces the Be Word event. June 25th, Elon Musk agrees to join the Be Word event with Jack and Cathy Woods. Again, one of the big clues the narrative flip was coming was that they are mainstream media darlings.
Yeah, correct.
And mainstream media, for the price of Bitcoin to go up, mainstream media positive attention is critical. Because it hits the retail.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, because again, like, I would know Jack Dorsey, Elon Musk, or Cathy Wood. Like, just anybody that would be somewhat interested in that is going to know those names and see them as an expert, as somebody, like, I mean, that's kind of where you're leaning with that, is that what we're seeing with the data is that those people have influence to the retail investors. So if they're positive, the normal person walking down the street sees Elon Musk says Bitcoin's great, that means I got to go invest now. That's as simple as that, honestly, if you break it down.
Well, and the guy's not wrong.
Sure.
And I'm going to take based off of this data, he's the CEO and he has a responsibility to his employees and his shareholders to make sure that Tesla does well.
Yep.
So the thing is I think he was in between a rock and a hard spot. And unfortunately, he goes on Saturday Night Live and he tries, right? And what would you do in that position? Like, I think he genuinely wants to help society move forward. I think he genuinely cares about the little guy. And I think because he's so big, he gets stuck in between rock and hard places, because they give him a call and say, hey, if you still want us to talk about Tesla and SpaceX, and you still want media attention for your projects that help the planet move forward, perhaps you fix this for us, right? What do you do?
Yeah.
Because next thing you know, you're the enemy of the mainstream media and the financial institutions.
Yeah. And again, like you're saying, he's got his company to work for. He's got people that he employs, people that have families as well. And you kind of get stuck there.
I think he tried to warn us too. Like, we got a video on the YouTube channel, man. You remember that?
Yep.
Like, the SNL was him warning us. If you go watch that, like, we should link it in the notes of the show.
Yeah, we'll put it in there for sure.
Okay.
So
July 13th, I make the prediction on the narrative flip for the 21st. July 17th, Unbound Engine makes a positive price prediction in the next 30 days. And July 20th, Bitcoin continues to decline to about 29,000.
Yep.
And July 21st, it all changes.
Who would have thought it?
Who would have thought it? I don't know if I'm glad I'm right. And it's not even me. It was the engine. But I don't know if I'm glad the engine's right or
not
glad the engine's right.
What does it So what does that say? Is that there are data-driven narratives that you can figure out for this product, for Bitcoin, correct?
I think it says what everybody knows,
Right.
that the media is used to push a narrative that drives a specific sentiment, how you feel about something on a topic.
Mm-hmm.
And the most powerful way of doing that is through fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So when we look at headlines that are fearful, that incorporate fear, that make you afraid, emotionally concerned about your investment, about your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's always something on page 12.
Right.
That it's there for, right? And the thing is it sounds like a conspiracy theory, except for when you look at the data. I don't know what else to say. Going back to the UFO stuff, right? I mean, how many times have we heard presidents say we're doing positive campaigns to try to get war support up for the American public, right?
Yeah.
Pushing an agenda designed to change the sentiment. Now, what happens if we can understand that? What happens if when that narrative is going to change? Because there's clues. What happens when the individual person like you and me get access to this tool? Instead of honestly, this just popped in my head, but can this help solve some wealth inequality?
Yeah, that's a really good point. It just seems like you want to take the idea of conspiracy theories out the window and just basically take that out, take religion, take political bias out of all of that, and you can just look at data. You can deduce a narrative out of that.
There could have absolutely been bias in there, but what happens when the source data is available, right?
Correct.
You hear so much on, it's like the data shows, the science shows. What data, right?
Yeah.
Show me. And so here's the data on Bitcoin.
Do we have a new prediction right now, or is that for a later tease for a later episode?
No, so in the next episode, we're just going to get an update on the second part of that tweet, which is the ETF prediction. We might even take a look at some of the Jim Cramer stuff, which I think you recall is also interesting.
Yes.
But what we're seeing right now is legislation, which is putting in official regulation framework.
Mm-hmm.
Well, regulation doesn't need legislation. Like the legislation says, here's the overarching, and then regulators go in and they work within the overarching frame. Which sets up approval for ETFs is kind of the prediction. And what makes the Bitcoin price go higher for all of these institutional investors and customers is when the retail investors pile on top of it.
Yep.
And when you make ETFs available, it becomes available to every mom and pop, every hardworking blue collar American that has a retirement fund that they can just modify to get access to, which sets up for a pretty big price gain for this, right?
For Bitcoin, correct.
Yeah. And then I would say the only other prediction that we'll end up also following for the course of probably the next 6 to 8 months is that I'm calling this cycle. I'm saying that we're out of the bear market. We're in the bull market to the fall.
Sure.
And that this cycle is the institutional adoption cycle.
Oh, yeah.
And that we'll hit a bear market before we hit mainstream corporation adoption, which will happen due to pressure by those same institutional investors, pushing them to do that because they're public companies. This is the current thesis.
Very, very interesting.
Really fun, right?
It's fascinating. Again, I've seen some of the stuff. Obviously, I am doing things with you on these videos and everything like that. So I just want more people to be aware of this. I wish we had this when it was up last time. It would have made a lot of us a lot of money. So luckily we've got something now.
It's going to be fun.
If you guys like all of this stuff, you can go to cryptounbound.com, sign up for the newsletter. It's absolutely free. You can get You can get notified when the next show is here, and you can also get to our monthly report. We'll have the July report out soon, if it is not out already by the time you see this video. And also get into the Discord server. We got a ton of people there. All those cool things will be in the description, and we will chat with you later.